Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we're doing a box office breakdown for this past weekend, which saw the fourth week numbers for Black Panther Wakanda Forever, able to earn it the #1 spot once admitting that it came underneath what they were projecting. Whereas if you go to Deadline, since they and the other industry so-called experts were projecting, depending on which news source, which news site you're using, because their projections are just a little bit different. But the film did drop out, and they were expecting it to only drop around 50%. I was kind of surprised by that. I was like, wow, okay, this film, if these numbers hold, will then be doing much better than I would have expected, because coming off of a holiday weekend, I would expect things to kind of, correct, right? To be able to get back onto the track that it was going on, since now you have a lot of people who are no longer off of school or off of work or anything like that, where that's why you saw the massive gains over the Thanksgiving holiday. So it's just interesting that that is indeed exactly what happened. And again, Box Office Pro continuing to show that it can sometimes be hit or miss. Regardless of any of that, the film is well close to crossing that $400 million mark. It is still ahead of where Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness was at the same point in its release, around 6% ahead. And if those numbers continue to hold, we're looking at the film ending domestically somewhere between $450 and $500 million. And so that is still on pace. Again, something that I've been saying internationally, does it do anything in comparison to the other films that I have mentioned? It's not anywhere close to getting to the international of Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, but just how much does it actually make? Is it able to push it to $850 million or more? Right now, it's looking like $800 million is a lot more likely of a scenario. And anyone who wonders, like, why does the numbers change always? Like, why do my projections change a little bit? It's because what I'm doing is I'm following the numbers, and then I'm trying to make calculations and trying to make predictions based off of historical standards. And so be in an exact way because of the fact that these numbers are constantly changing. And so that's the reason why I tried to give ranges. So that's why for a while now I've been saying it's going to make well over $750 million. That's why I've been saying it's the range probably somewhere between $8 and $950 million. At one point, based off of the tracking from last weekend, it was looking much more like the chance of getting to 850 or more was likely to happen. Right now, it's just, again, doesn't seem to be in the cards for the movie to be able to make $1 billion. That's been off the table for a long time. About that, a little bit more, talk about Violent Night. Strange World's massive drop, meaning the film will lose a cool $200+ million. One of the biggest flops of the year since Lightyear, both from the same studio. So a big question, of course, is how can Disney justify spending all of this money on their films when they end up making, a little bit of profit, but those massive losses are going to cut into those profit margins by quite a bit, looking at just the box office numbers themselves. So we'll talk about that and some other films, including the new release of Violent Night, which gave Black Panther a run for its money a little bit. Was actually ahead of it on one of the days of the weekend. But as I was telling people who were trying to say, oh, Violent Night, look at this. Yeah, again, those Saturday numbers, you have to always wait for those to come in. And of course, the Sundays will have an impact as well. And sure enough, Black Panther came out ahead. So all this and more. Before we go any further, though, please make sure you smash that like button, light the fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, smash the rumble button if you're watching over there. It does mean a lot. And also, if you're on YouTube, make sure that you hit the bell and subscribe. Notification goes live on the channel. So let's dive into it. Black Panther dropping 61%, so much higher than what was being projected by Box Office Pro, and they even admit that on their site, as it says right here, dropping 61% according to their metrics. And it says there, this was a steeper drop than expected. Oh, really? With weekend projections around 21 to 23 million is what they had initially, but still good enough to hold on for first place. And then they try to do a little damage control by saying, in doing so, it becomes the first film to notch at least 4 weekends at the top spot in almost a year since Spider-Man No Way Home, trying to put it into the same category as them. It then also tries to put this up against some of the other films. It's interesting right now is that it's got the number 13 opening weekend of all time, 27th, second weekend, number 13, third weekend, and a sharp drop to the 79th, fourth weekend of all time. Yeah, that is quite a sharp drop. Among the MCU films, it had the number 8 opening weekend, number 10 second weekend, number 6 third weekend, dropping to the number 11th fourth weekend. Compared to Black Panther, Wakanda's weekends have come in either, opening weekend was 10% below the 2018 film, 40% below in its second weekend, 31%, 56% dropping. So again, nowhere close to the numbers that Black Panther, the first film, did. Remember, this film made over $700 million. I was looking back at ticket sales for this movie, and what's interesting is that in Infinity War, Black Panther actually sold more tickets according to the charting that was being done on the numbers. They have a really interesting chart there. And so again, Black Panther's $700+ million domestic was well ahead of a lot. a chance for the film to eke out even more here in this way. Through 24 days, as you can see, it's now 29% where Black Panthers was domestically at the same point in its release, 15% behind Top Gun Maverick, not surprised there, 6% ahead of May's Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, which is why, again, if it's still tracking ahead of that, $450 million domestically is definitely a guarantee. It's 18% ahead of The Batman, so even though it is doing better than Batman domestically, it's not having as strong performance internationally, but I still think the domestic's going to be enough, that 18% especially, it's going to be enough to push it over The Batman being one of the top 5 films of the year as far as overall box office is concerned. And it's 30% ahead of Thor: Love and Thunder, which is the reason why it is going to easily pass the $750 million that was made by that film. So a lot more interesting details and numbers. Their numbers, again, that was my mistake. Yeah, you can actually find some at least decent data that they were reporting talking about this movie. Going to the numbers back once again. Violent Night opened at $13.3 million. This film only cost $20 million to make, so this is a very strong domestic number. It actually opened over $20 million internationally, so right now on a good pace to make its money back within 2 or 3 weeks. Strange World, though, coming in the number 3 spot, making $4.9 million, dropped 60% from last weekend, and as I said, because of $180 million production budget, likely to lose over $200 million, and not just over, well over $200 million when all is said and done. The Menu actually rose a spot to the number 4 spot, making $3.5 million, at $16 million in the red or so it still has a chance of being able to make its money back. Devotion is the other film that came out last weekend, and this saw another 53% drop, or again, I would say pretty massive for this movie specifically, but percentage-wise, it's not terrible. Can be a little deceptive because that 2.8 million is really where the focus should be because, yeah, its opening was not strong. This film is also projected to be a guaranteed $100 million flop for Sony. I don't really know if the film is good or not. I've heard some mixed things about it. Some needs to make a crap ton of money because of a $90 million budget. And yeah, well over $100 million is what I'm projecting in losses. Coming in the number 6 spot is a Fathom Events movie from a faith-based company called I Heard the Bells. So made $1.8 million at small releases. Black Adam dropped another 49%, also another 400 screens. This film still around $70 million in the red, has no chance of making its money back. So yet again, another Warner Brothers flop, 7 weeks out. Fabelmans, still not really out anywhere as far as major releases, so I'll have to break that one down when it finally releases in more theaters and finishes its run, I guess. Bones and All continuing to hang around, 47% drop. Not a terrible number to take it from that with only 1,700 left. So very likely for this film to be dropping out when all is said and done. Top Gun Maverick did come back to theaters this weekend, came back to over 1,800 screens. In fact, this was projected by Box Office Pro to make around $1 million and only made 700,000. So as you can see, they were off on multiple fronts. And then you have some, but She Said, the one about the hashtag #MeToo movement, continuing to be a massive flop, which of course just makes me happy because obviously it's going to be politically motivated. La La Crocodile has been kind of hanging around for a while at this point, but it only added $3 million internationally between last weekend and this weekend, so I would say it's, again, I said it was a long shot for the film to make its money back, but it's still well over $20 million in the red, so that's not likely going to happen. Well, at the bottom there is the $45,000 made for The Woman King, and as you can see, that film also still a box office failure. Now let's talk a little bit about the numbers for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, because obviously one of the things that I've been noting is the difference between it and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, right? So right now, at the same point in its release, right, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, $393, same point in its release for Doctor Strange, $370 million. And so the numbers that we were getting from Box Office Pro indicated the film was going to cross $400 million domestically. That obviously did not happen. Again, my fault for listening to them. And as you can see, though, it is still 6% ahead, right? They even point out saying it's still trending. You start to see that it's not going to have the holiday to help it at this point. Does it have enough gas in the tank domestically to hold out until the holiday season really gears up towards the end of December? I think Disney is going to keep this film in theaters all the way through the end of the year, and so I would say it probably does have at least a chance to be able to make a little bit more than what some might expect. That's why I say the range on what I think the domestic end will be is somewhere between 450 and 500. We'll still have to wait and see, especially with the massive financial failure that they have in Strange World. It means that they are going to, again, have to, they're going to have to keep this film out longer than what they probably otherwise would have in the past. But again, still trending ahead of where Doctor Strange was. If you actually look to the top films of the year right now, as I said, it is trending to get to around $800 million or so, which would put it ahead of Thor: Love and Thunder. I think that's going to pass that pretty easily, probably within the next couple weeks. And I think it'll also pass the Batman $767 million as well, putting it into the top 5 films of the year. And so they're can of worms. I think Valiant Renegade has done a really good job of breaking those numbers down. So if you want to know more about ticket sales and things like that, go check in with. And also the fact that it is making profit at around $100 million in net gain profit. But yeah, probably going to not be all that impressive for it when it reminds itself, oh, wait a minute, we have to make up for the financial losses that were Lightyear and now Strange World. So going into some of these numbers, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, $733 million worldwide at this point in time. So again, we'll probably get to $750 million by next week, so probably we'll pass up the entire total of Thor: Love and Thunder, and that's the reason why by the 5th week, if it's already passed where Thor: Love and Thunder's end total was after around 10 or 11 weeks, that's the reason why I would say $800 million is, again, still a much stronger domestic than international showing, but yeah, people in the comment section who've been saying it's going to make $1 billion, you got no ground to stand on at this point. There are no numbers to indicate that whatsoever. Again, I will continue to adjust my numbers based off of what we actually get week to week, because those numbers do change. And so therefore the outcomes that I think are going to happen are going to change, because ultimately, when it comes to this movie, the projections, the official projections that I have as far as what I think the final total is, a minimum, right, projection, so a little bit over where $779 million again, so $800 million would be in that category. So I'm still within the range of the historical tracking that most films fall into, right? Most films fall somewhere between around doubling their first 2 weeks to, falling off quite a bit, and having 70% of their entire box office within the first 2 weeks of their release. And so that's why these numbers are always so important to come back to and reference, because most films do fall into that category. And right now, the projections for Black Panther are still panning out. Break even, but yeah, this is its opening weekend. Yeah, I would say it's got a good chance of being able to do so, if not by next weekend, then at the very least by the 3rd weekend, even going up against a film like Avatar, which is going to dominate the box office. This is such a unique title in comparison. I don't think it's going to be impacted all that much by that film. Strange World, on the other hand, even though this charting down here is, I don't know what the heck's going on down here historically, why it's saying it's in the shading, because this film at $42.3 million on a $180 million budget, 2 weeks in, yeah, guaranteed to lose well over $200 million. Glass Onion, Knives Out Mystery, won't actually get an official release until December 23rd. They decided to do a week preview and made $15 million, but again, I don't know why. Was it to try to build anticipation? Was it to try to build up their subscriber base? How are they going to be able to justify the $200 million or so that they gave to Rian Johnson, who then spent only $40 million to make the movie itself, and they made $50 million at the domestic box office? How are they going to calculate the number of new subscribers that they have who are just subscribing for this specific movie? Again, I think it's a legitimate question. I do not understand why they bought the rights in the first place. I mean, I do when you look at how much money the first Knives Out film actually made, like the net profit on that film, but that's because it had a box office release where you can actually look into that data and you can actually have the numbers broken down for you, whereas for this, again, no idea what the heck they're thinking with that, but this film ended up capping at around $15 million, which actually is impressive for how few theaters this movie got released in. So Jim probably could have made a decent run, just like the first film did, where it overexceeded everyone's expectations, including mine. The menu is now at $47.2 million, so as you can see, it is definitely trending. You also have Devotion at $13.8 million. And so even though the charting has it doing a little better or doing okay, that $90 million budget is going to weigh this thing down. I Heard the Bell is $2.5 million. Again, very, very small release, made a decent amount of money per theater, so kudos to them. Black Adam at $384 million, still a financial failure. DCEU continues to be a financial flop. Let's see. The Fablemans still don't have enough information or data because they still have not done a official release for this. So again, they did special screenings starting early. I guess they're going to do a wider release when Christmas comes around, but I just don't understand. I'll have to wait for this film to actually finish its entire theatrical run before I can really do any numbers crunching, because yeah, I hate when theaters do that, or rather, I hate when studios do this because I can't do my projections, and I like doing my projections because I like to be able to show what these numbers are capable of doing and how these projections actually do pan out in a lot of ways. Bones and All was one of those films also that got a very small release, got a very weird release schedule, about two cannibals falling in love, starring Timothée Chalamet. So again, that film's up to $10.5 million. Ticket to Paradise, $167.8 million. Again, it made money. Good for it. Top Gun Maverick, since it did get a re-release, is now up to $1.48 billion. Man, I wish it was a little bit higher. Man, I wish they had a worldwide re-release for this movie because I would love for this film to get to $1.5 billion officially, but unfortunately, it doesn't look like that's going to be happening. She said at $8.8 million. I bet that is what she said. La La Crocodile at $85 million. So again, it actually tracked a lot better because it had pretty good legs, but a $50 million budget made this film not be able to make it. And then Pray for the Devil. They still have not released a budget, so I cannot do any actual breaking down of this movie other than it's made $40 million so far. It's, again, driving me nuts. All right, let's go to the box office charting because we all like charting here on OMB Reviews. We like to do a little charting. So Violent Night's $20.3 million opening weekend, very, very strong, and we'll get to that one in a second. But let's look at the second weekend numbers for a couple of films, which are going to be massive flops. So first, Strange World, $42.3 million in the second week, meaning that it's going to make somewhere by the end of its run between $60 and $84 million worldwide. A Disney animated film is not going to crack $100 million worldwide, most likely. Yeah. That is really, really bad. And if that is not a huge sign to Disney to stop screwing around with their properties and to stop screwing around with their agenda items, I don't know what else I don't know what else will get it through to them because that is atrocious. Also atrocious is what is going on with the film Devotion because of its second weekend numbers of around $13.8 million. It's going to make only $19 to $27 million, so even less, so much less than what Strange World is going to end up making. But because this film cost only $90 million in comparison to the $100, it costs, half as much, it's still going to be a financial loss, but not nearly as bad, but both still pretty bad nonetheless. So the projections that I have for the losses on Strange World, it's going to lose somewhere between $233 and $219 million at best. Best case scenario, it loses rather $219 million. So even if we just put this up against the likely $100+ million that's going to be made by Wakanda Forever, it's still going to be $100 million in the red. Okay, you have some of that covered by the net profits that were made by Thor Love and Thunder, but it's still in the red. Okay, then you go back and you say, well, wait a minute. We also still have we also have Doctor Strange, right? Doctor Strange was able to make a fair amount of profit, right? Let's see if that film is actually even still showing up on my charts because it only goes to a certain point in time. It looks like it's not showing up there, but that's why I have my handy dandy Google chart, which is able to go back much further in time. So let's see where that Doctor Strange box office ended up being, and let's just do some random numbering in real time because we like to do things in real time here on the channel. It makes things fun for me, probably drives y'all crazy, but hey, I have fun with it, and I've probably passed it several times at this point, but then again, the film is pretty forgettable, so don't blame me all that much. So yeah, that film ended up making around, $407 million? Hold on one sec. Sorry, $272 million in net gain profit. So, as I said, that might be able to make up the rest of the loss coming just from Strange World, but then you have to take into account the massive loss that came from a little film called Lightyear, right? Lightyear itself lost around $164 million. So, as you can see, you're looking at really a best case scenario for the Disney films that got released this year to maybe break even, maybe have a small amount of profit. They're in a lot of trouble, to say the very least. So again, just something that I wanted to point out because, the studio is struggling quite a bit, and it has to do a massive turnaround. And I don't think bringing Bob Iger back is going to fix your problems because people forget, right? People might try to put the blame on Bob Chapek because he was the one in charge at the time of these films releasing, but those films would have been in production and would have been put in play likely when Iger was still in charge. So I think that it is something that people are maybe giving him a little bit of a pass on, too much of a pass on, I would say. A very similar light, right? That right now it's actually at $13 million, but right now it's projected to lose somewhere between $123 and $118 million. And so, as I said, I do not think this, Devotion might be a good movie, but it's not going to make its money back, and it's going to be a pretty massive financial flop. Glass Onion, $51 million in the red. And again, $40 million budget, it was what was being reported. It is Netflix exclusive, but got a week preview in theaters. I don't know what they're doing with this, because the only numbers that we'll have actually available to us that we can actually utilize in any way say that the movie lost money. But again, who can really say at this point in time? The menu at $47 million is actually tracking pretty well, right? I had projected that this film would be either a $16 million loss or $4 million loss. And so right now it's still tracking around that amount of money, right? Around that $16 million, but it's going to just about crack into, I would say by the next couple weeks, we'll probably get pretty close to that minimum projection that I had, and could even, right, if the legs stay strong, could actually even end up making some profit. I think I remember saying that it was a possibility even early on. She said $42 million in the red. Black Adam, $69 million in the red. Again, still a massive flop. $23.9 million in the red for La La Crocodile. Again, that's why I think the film does not really have a chance of making its money back. And I believe that is it as far as the numbers are concerned. I was able to update Don't Worry Darling. Someone was fighting with me about that. Yeah, the last number that I got from the numbers, $474,000. Yeah, easily made up by any Blu-ray and 4K sales. So Don't Worry Darling made its money back. Anyway, what else thoughts about these numbers? Are you excited that Violent Night is doing pretty well, it seems? Did you go see it? What were your thoughts about it? Also, what are your thoughts about Strange World and the massive $200+ million that it is likely going to lose for Disney? Yeah, again, go woke, go broke. Some people might say. I ultimately would think that it's because, hey, when you make a film that has some of the worst marketing for anything, in addition to all of those other things that people add in and can talk about and can bring up, you are basically guaranteeing this film to be a massive failure. And it makes you ask the question, is Disney going to be able to make any headway in their animations department? Because they are struggling quite a bit. And it's interesting that they are releasing some films that you would think might actually be able to make some money. I mean, the fact that the Enchanted sequel, not that I wanted a sequel to Enchanted or thought that it was going to be a massive moneymaker, but the fact that as well as the first Enchanted did, they decided to put that one on Disney Plus. And then they put Strange World and spend that much money on it and end up losing $200 million. Disney, no idea what they're doing. No idea what they're doing. And they are clearly going insane in the membrane, is how I will describe it. But let me know your thoughts about this or anything else I mentioned in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, not the fire button, smash the little rumble button. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. A huge shout out to Chris from the 80s, who has upgraded his Patreon membership. That is his YouTube channel, Chris from the 80s. Again, thank you very much, good sir. We will yet again have the November shout outs video, which should be covering everyone else. That was the only notification that I got as far as Patreon was concerned, and as far as the other platforms are concerned as well. So I will be recording that December video very, very soon. Hopefully I'll have some time today, but I'm kind of on a time crunch with baby Thor currently in nap time. So anyway, you guys are all amazing. Have a wonderful rest of your day. A blessed second Sunday of Advent. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my November Patreon Subscribe Star and Locals members at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above. Starting off with Patreon with Father Luca Illich. Thank you very much, Father. Garrett Searles, Jaimir Irie Hymason, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Laura, The Modern Major General Story, Orange Hat Reviews, who you can check out on YouTube at his channel, Orange Hat Reviews, Rosetta Allen, who also has a YouTube channel that you can check out at Eagle Writer, and Miss Martin Muses, who also has a YouTube channel, Miss Martin Muses, and of course the amazing Empress of the Universe, Tina B, who you can check out at her YouTube channel, Tina B, where she hosts the show with Stephanie B, one of my mods, and one of my Valkyrie, called Soup to Nuts. Check out Soup to Nuts, and it premieres pretty much every Friday. So again, shout out to all of my Patreon people, also to all my Subscribe Star people, starting off with Matt317. Check him out on Twitch at Matt317. The R, Fast Reaction, Mr. Roy, J-Rod, the Beer Guru, and ZK-Man. And ZK-Man you can check out over at xtheboundaries.co to follow him as he starts his podcast and also for many of his musical musings as well. Check him out. Very, very talented guy. And then lastly, my locals peeps. We got Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan. How about a hockey player? UAB Mad Dog, Mike Jackson for the win. J.H. Schwalbach, Brett D90, and the amazing lawyer, Robert Barnes. Thank you all so very much for supporting me. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, go ahead and check out the top link in the video description below where you get access to that. Also, you get access to special things like giveaways and also exclusive podcasts that I do with John the Flickpick Flickinger and other guests throughout the month of November and in the previous and the months to follow as well. And again, if any of that sounds interesting to you, especially the 4K giveaways, Steelbook giveaways, some of them that I have to give away this month are films like Starship Troopers on 4K Steelbook, Top Gun Maverick on 4K Steelbook, amongst many others. If that sounds interesting to you, check out the link and follow the instructions down below. Anyway, you guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.